a quiet town of 600 souls, where everyone knew each other as names. And the loudest sound on a winter morning was the creak of a porch step. It was the kind of place people left their doors unlocked. Until November 16th, 1957. That day, police walked into a lonely farmhouse on the edge of town and saw something no human being was ever meant to see. They'd come searching for a missing woman. Instead, they stepped into a nightmare frozen in time. Inside that farmhouse lived a man everyone thought they knew, Ed Gein. He fixed fences for his neighbors, smiled shyly at the grocery store, and even babysat local children. But beneath his quiet exterior, Ed was hiding something unspeakable, something buried beneath floorboards, sealed behind doors, and alive only in his mind. When detectives later asked why there were nails driven into a woman's head, Ed didn't flinch. He simply said, "I was going to hang it on the wall." As decoration, that single sentence shattered Plainfield's innocence and carved his name into American history. Before we can understand what they found inside that house, we need to understand how Ed Gein became capable of creating it. Because Ed Gein wasn't born a monster. He was made December 11th, 1900. Vernon County, Wisconsin. George Gein, a carpenter and occasional tanner, married Augusta Wilhelmina, a woman whose devotion to God was as fierce as her hatred for sin. Their marriage was a war from the start, a union built on control, alcohol, and fear. George was a drunk. He stumbled from job to job, spending what little money he earned on liquor. When he drank, he grew violent. When he sobered up, he sank into shame. Augusta, meanwhile, turned to religion with a vengeance. She saw the world as a cesspool of temptation, and all women except herself as instruments of the devil. She believed sex was filthy, desire was evil, and the only way to survive was obedience. She ruled her home with fire and scripture, her voice thundering through the farmhouse like an angry sermon. Her sons, Henry and Edward, were raised in isolation, taught that the outside world was dangerous, that other people were corrupt, and that salvation could only come through her. In 1915, Augusta moved the family to a 195-acre farm outside Plainfield, remote, swampy, and utterly cut off from the world. Neighbors were miles away. The boys had no friends. Their days were filled with chores, and their nights with Bible readings about death, judgment, and sin. Augusta's lessons were clear. The world was wicked, women were poison, and she alone could protect them. To young Ed, shy and quiet with a lazy eye, his mother was not just a parent, she was divine. She became the center of his world, the source of truth, and the voice of God. When George died in 1940, nothing restrained Augusta's control. Her influence deepened, and so did the darkness inside her son. By 1944, Ed's older brother Henry began to push back. He called Augusta a hypocrite, criticized her obsession with sin, and warned friends that Ed was dangerously attached to her. Then came the fire. The brothers were burning brush on the farm when the blaze got out of control. When it was finally extinguished, Henry was missing. Ed joined the search party. He led them quietly through the charred field, then stopped, giggled, and said, "I think I know where he is." Moments later, they found Henry's body unburned, face down in the ash. There were bruises on his head. The coroner listed the cause as smoke inhalation. No autopsy was performed. No one asked questions, but many later wondered whether that night marked Ed's first kill. After Henry's death, Augusta and Ed were all that remained. And in her son's eyes, that was exactly how it should be. Not long after Henry's death, Augusta suffered a stroke. Ed became her full-time caregiver. He slept beside her, cooked her meals, and prayed with her each night. Even as she weakened, she never stopped belittling him, calling him weak, useless, and unworthy of surviving without her. It was abuse disguised as prophecy. When Augusta died in December of 1945, Ed's world ended. Neighbors later said they could hear him wailing for days. The one person he worshipped, feared, and loved beyond measure was gone. And with her death, something inside him shattered. He sealed off her bedroom, leaving it untouched, as though she might return at any moment. The rest of the farmhouse decayed into filth, garbage piled in corners, rats skittering underfoot. But Augusta's room remained immaculate, frozen in time. a shrine to a god that no longer answered him. Soon after his mother's death, Ed began visiting cemeteries at night. He read the obituaries, selecting women who resembled Augusta, middle-aged, religious, respectable. He exhumed their bodies and brought back pieces of them. Bones, skin, organs. He treated these remains like artifacts, cleaning them, preserving them, and arranging them throughout the house. He made masks out of faces, chairs upholstered in human skin, a lampshade crafted from flesh. But his most disturbing creation was the woman's suit, a full-body outfit stitched together from the skin of several victims. When questioned later, Ed said he would put it on and walk around the house, pretending to be his mother. He wasn't trying to destroy a memory. He was trying to resurrect it. Grave robbing could only take him so far. The skin of the dead was too dry, too fragile. He needed something fresher. In December 1954, tavern owner Mary Hogan disappeared. Ed was a regular at her bar. When townspeople joked about her absence, Ed smiled and said, "She's at my house right now." No one believed him. 3 years later, on November 16, 1957, Bernice Warden, a hardware store owner, vanished. Her son found the store empty, the cash register open, and a receipt for antifreeze sold to Ed Gein. Police followed the trail to his farmhouse. What they discovered inside would scar them for life. In a small shed behind the main house, Bernice Warden's body hung upside down from a beam, her torso split open, her head missing. Inside the home, officers found what looked like props from a nightmare, but they were all too real. Human skulls turned into bowls, a belt made of nipples, a box of noses, 9 faces peeled and preserved like masks, a heart sitting on the stove, a woman's head in a paper bag. The house was a museum of death, a shrine built from human remains. When police asked why, Ed said he planned to hang Bernice's head on the wall as decoration. He said it calmly, as if describing a hobby. He admitted to killing Bernice and Mary Hogan. The rest, he said, came from the graves. He spoke about it with no hatred, no thrill, just quiet logic, as though none of it were wrong. Psychiatrists later said, Ed lived in a world shaped entirely by his mother Est. Voice a place where sin and purity were blurred, and death was just another way to keep her near. He was found legally insane and sent to a psychiatric hospital, where he spent the rest of his life. Doctors described him as polite, compliant, even kind. He gardened, read magazines, and occasionally laughed at jokes, but no one could say whether he ever truly understood what he'd done. In 1958, Ed's farmhouse mysteriously burned to the ground. Most of the town was relieved. No one wanted to rebuild what it represented. Hollywood, however, rebuilt it in spirit. Norman Bates in Psycho, Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Buffalo Bill and The Silence of the Lambs. All drawn from the same quiet man who once babysat neighborhood children. Ed Gein died in 1984 at the age of 70. He was buried beside his mother, and not far from the graves he had designated. Ed Gein didn't see himself as evil. He saw himself as a son trying to hold on to the only person who ever mattered. His crimes were born not out of hatred, but from the desperate need to keep his mother alive in body, in mind, and in the walls of his home. But what his story truly reveals isn't just how one man lost touch with reality. It shows how obsession, isolation, and control can twist love into something unrecognizable. The people of Plainfield still remember the silence that followed that night, a silence that lasted for decades. And when they tell the story now, they don't talk about the monsters he inspired. They talk about the neighbor they once trusted, the man who lived among them, and the secret that waited in his farmhouse just beyond the locked door.